Welcome back to another weekly episode. I decided I'm going to do these every Sunday, so if you follow me, or maybe you don't want to follow me but you want to watch these, you can come back every Sunday. The first thing I wanted to discuss here is something that I feel could benefit other people, that I accidentally did with Jay and Rose. I'm now kind of realizing it's kind of a theory, but let me just tell you. So I have something that I like to call chronic loneliness. And by that I mean, if I am not being perceived by another person, I don't like it. It feels very unsettling. I just would always rather be perceived than not perceived. Like, I wouldn't even say I'm like an extrovert, because it's not like I care about like talking to other people and like making relationships and stuff. I just like the presence of other people. I'm also a stay-at-home mom, so those things kind of don't go together. Obviously, Jay and Rose are people, but I also have to take care of them, and there's limited conversations. It's not the same as like another adult. Anyway, I do this thing with Jay and Rose where I didn't realize it until recently, is I stay at places extra long. And I did always kind of know this, but I didn't realize to the extent. Like, for example, I bring Rose to a baby story time every week, and we're always the last one to leave the library. We go to the playground. We see groups come and go, because we're there for hours, and I find that people are there for like 30 to 45 minutes max. You get the point. I just stay at places very long simply because I don't want to go home and be alone. And because of this, I feel that it has actually benefited Jay and Rose, because they don't check out like as soon as other kids do. That's like a term that parents use, like, oh, they're checking out, gotta go. I simply noticed that Jay and Rose don't check out as quickly as other kids. In fact, they almost will never check out unless I'm the one that's like, okay, let's go, we gotta go. I know that when I say things like that, there are a lot of people that like, you're comparing your kids to other kids, like, wow, this is so messed up. Okay, we need to talk about this. This is something that I feel very passionately about. There is a very big difference between judging and observing. I cannot help but notice that other kids simply check out way sooner than Jay and Rose. It's like if the cops came to your house and said, we heard you were at the bank today, there was a bank robber, can you please describe that person? And you describe that person as overweight. The cop's not gonna be like, oh my god, that's messed up, you're judging them. No, you simply observed, you made an observation, this person was overweight. That doesn't mean that you're judging. You know what I mean? Like, you can't help but observe. If you're conscious, you're observing. All I'm saying is I genuinely think there's a correlation between them being able to be at the same place for a very long time and my chronic loneliness, because I don't really know anyone else that stays at places like the amount of time that I do. I understand this could be a very privileged place. Like, I know that I don't have to go to work. Some moms have to do that. Some moms have multiple other kids they have to tend to. Trust me, I totally understand that this is not attainable for every mom, and moms don't do it because they just like want to go home. But there are a lot of people that do just want to go home. They just don't feel like being at the park for more than 30 minutes. I get it, but maybe just be more aware of it. Maybe if you do have extra time, just stay. Genuinely think that it can help their attention span. Okay, next topic. Someone made a TikTok, right, where I think they like came home from work and they said, oh, thank God I don't have to come home to any kids. I can't imagine coming home to kids after a long day at work. And everyone in the comments were like, oh my God, like literally worst nightmare, whatever. And then that made a mom make a video that said, I'm so thankful I get to come home to kids. I love coming home to my kids. I can't imagine not coming home to my kids. And the reason I bring this up is because, first of all, there's obviously a rise of people that just don't want kids. And it seems like they kind of overtake social media. Like, it seems like, at least from like my For You page and the things I see on Facebook and Instagram, it seems like it's more popular to not want kids than to want kids and love being a parent. And for that reason, I'm so thankful that I became a mom before I had TikTok, before Instagram Reels, before any of this, because I feel like it's damaging to parents. It's basically saying like no one wants your life. Like, oh my God, it's so pathetic. Like, that's my worst nightmare. And if I heard that when I first became a mom, my perspective might have shifted, not because I didn't like it as much, but because I might rethink, like, am I supposed to not like this? Like, what's wrong with this? Like, it can really get in your brain if people are telling you that your life is terrible. So it bothers me. It really does. There's so many people in my life that I want to have kids and they don't necessarily want it, but I want it for them because I just know them and I know they would be really good parents and I know they would love it. But I have to bite my tongue because it's just one of those things you just don't get it until you're doing it, until you are a parent. And at the same time, I also don't want people that don't want to be parents to become parents, because that's a recipe for disaster. Because to believe that everyone is just going to magically change and love being a parent the second they become one is very unrealistic and not true, and very wishful thinking, because it's just not the case. And a lot of times people have kids and they don't like them. They don't like being a parent. And that just makes me think about the child that can tell that their parents don't want them. They never wanted them. And that usually leads to severe mental illness. I will never forget when I was 18, I just discovered the controversy around, and me being naive, young, I didn't understand how complicated life was. And I also was that person that would always just be the devil's advocate. I would always take the unpopular opinion. I would always want to say things for shock value, whatever. So I decided I was pro-life. And I thought that it was so ridiculous to not be that. And it was just the obvious answer. But over the years of being an adult, my mind changed, not because of anything specific, but just by simply living, observing. It just became very clear to me that I am not pro-life. I couldn't help but notice all of these monsters that create the most terrible crimes you could think of. There is a common denominator with 99% of them, and that is they all grew up with parents who did not want them. And for me, that was one of the reasons that started to shift my mind, because how could I want people to have babies that don't want babies and also want a better country? It just doesn't feel like it aligns. It feels like a solution to a lot of mental illness is the people that want to have kids need to be able to have kids. The people that don't want to have kids need to stop having kids. And to be pro-life means to also force people to have kids that don't want to have kids. When I became a mom back in 2018 is what really sealed the deal for me, because I didn't realize, like, you don't just pop kids out. You know, maybe 100, 200 years ago you can make the pro-life argument, but to me, it's just not valid. It's not valid when moms are forced to leave their babies to go to work, when mental illness is at an all-time high, especially in women, when school are at an all-time high, mass in general. All of these issues combined make the pro-life argument so invalid to me, because how can you be pro-life when life isn't even pro-life? I feel like these issues need to be at least under control for that to even be an argument. And I used to think that being pro-choice was also being anti-baby, but now I know that it's not. It's actually pro-mother, it's pro-quality of life. And when I think back to when I was 18 and I thought that I was pro-life, and I would, I wouldn't necessarily talk about it that much, but there are times where I did mention it and I would argue with people about it, and I feel embarrassed and I feel ashamed that I judge people for that. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this, because I just want to make my stance clear now. And I hope that if you disagree, that it can be respectful. And I know a lot of people are pro-life because of their religion. And that's something that I can't understand that either, because I'm not religious. I'm an atheist. And when I say I'm an atheist, I mean I don't disbelieve in God, but it's a lack of God. I don't see any evidence for a God. My dream for the future of this podcast is to create a platform where people are level-headed. Like, I try to be, and I notice people in my comments are the same way. I think that level-headed people attract each other. And to have intellectual conversations that are actually productive, because that's I enjoy listening to that content, so that's why I try to make it for other people. I am looking forward to reading the comments, because I know that you guys always have great ideas, great opinions, great thoughts, so please leave them below.